Hello, everyone, and welcome to the roster lock-in video. I wanted to make a video instead of just straight up releasing the roster because I want to give a little bit of context behind where exactly everyone's currently sitting and what the decision-making process was like behind the scenes. So, first of all, whenever me and the officers sat down to discuss, and just so you know, we discussed this at length throughout season 4, and everyone had some differing opinions, which just gives you a good idea of how close everything was. It wasn't just a super clear cut, okay, this is our 20 or our 25. It was a ongoing discussion for weeks on weeks on weeks, multiple hours every week, talking about this and trying to figure out what direction we wanted to go. We've started to reach a level where the guild is getting to a point where everyone is really starting to play at the top levels of their specs and at the top levels mechanically, which means that there are very little areas where the separation can be made. That being said, we kind of did the lock-in in 3 phases almost, and I'm going to walk you through those as we saw it. So first, whenever we sat down, it was pretty obvious to us that the players currently on your screen were going to be locked in. From the very first conversation, pretty much every single one of these except Kaimaki originally was locked in, and Kaimaki throughout season 4 clearly showed that he had what it took, and he joined this tier 1 conversation. Um, I think both Abrix and Meeks have performed really well over the course of season 4, and I think they have shown very few weaknesses other than, some small mental lapses. Light is pretty much the same thing, performed really well throughout season 3 as well as season 4, except for small mental lapses. I think me, Alden, and Quanxi definitely have been very consistent and kind of anchor players for us. And I think Kaimaki has shown that he not only has the ability to improve, which is what got him from being in kind of this tier 2 area to the tier 1 area, it's where he also has improved at a level which allows him to be in this new, very easy decision point. Then after this, we started talking about, okay, well, who's next? And this changed a lot. And we kind of went through a few different variations of how we wanted to do this. And then eventually, I'd say the players who came in next were Kato, Long Name, Xenon, Kareem, Alec, Pro, Drutile, and Top Dam. Now, as far as all of those players go, the difference between the tier 1 players and these players is almost entirely consistency. It is just how consistent can you be to play at that top level. Like I said, we have gotten to the point where pretty much everyone has the ability to play at a top level. They have that capability, but it's how often do you do that and how often do you do the extras on top of just playing your spec and playing what you're supposed to do. How do you save the group whenever something goes wrong? How do you fix problems that happen during pulls? And that's kind of been where these players have the separation from those tier 1 players. But I think all of these players have played exceptionally well throughout season 4, with a few random points where their consistency has dropped, or they had issues with particular mechanics, something along those lines that didn't really make it super easy for us to decide for them to be locked in, but it was not a difficult conversation for us necessarily. Now, the final lock-ins were very difficult because we're not only thinking about at this point the players, but also composition. Because really, this final stage is okay, well, we want these players in, right? And we want multiple players that are on the tier 3 sheet in. But the problem that we had was we have to balance comp while dealing with that. So, discussing comp and knowing what players were willing to swap made it to where we eventually figured out where we wanted to go. And that leads us to this as our final lock-in. This adds on Vel, Rena, Mies, and Valera all to the healing roster, which we'll talk about in just a second. C-Raid to the melees. Zetlock, Quizzy, Mimi, and Tellery to the ranged. And then also Vincent and Short Pots, who are separately down there because Short Pots is having his child and will not be able to participate during most of Season 1. And then Vincent obviously is coming back after a extended break because of his 6-month on, 6 months off schedule. As far as what made these decisions was basically just, okay, we sat down and we were like, how likely is it that someone is going to be able to get progression time? Where they currently stand right now, how likely do we see them getting progression time? And if the answer was very, very low, then we went ahead and steered away from those players. So that also does not mean that everyone in here we expect to get a ton of progression time. There are particularly a couple players who are very close to the edge due to either compositional reasons, such as the priests, or due to potential play issues. But overall, we feel like that these players do have what it takes. And even the players that are not locked in, we feel like have what it takes. But it is so tight now that composition combined with consistency, combined with the top level of play that you've demonstrated, is what led us to choosing these players over the ones that are not currently on this list. If you want kind of a more detailed breakdown of what caused you not to make it, just go ahead and ask me. A few of them will be obvious to you, a few of them won't. If you want that information, go ahead and ask. We will start up the weekly reviews again, and that'll give you more context as to why you were decided for the roster in a more detailed basis. I just kind of wanted you guys to see the process that we went through and give you a general idea of where you're sitting and when you were locked in. That's all I've got for now, and I'm looking forward to a exciting War Within.